Hello, we're going to be going through the basic setup and initialization of the FMS-3000, including starting it up, adding in a flight plan, creating departures and arrivals, and plugging in a approach and setting up the performance. When you first start the FMS-3000, this is the screen that you're going to see. This is the status 1 of 2 screen. Shows you the nav databases that you're using, and here we can choose to change the database if we would like to, as our time and our date. If we click the next function key, it tells us the model of airplane we're in. This is the CJ3, our maximum takeoff weight, our current V-speed databases. This is what gives us our performance information, the engines that we have. So in order to get started with the FMS-3000, we have to start with the position initialization. And depending on, this is desktop software obviously, but in the sim, this will be pre-filled out for you. For us, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the JFK airport. We could put anything in here in order to use the software. We could put LAX, whatever, but we do all of our flying out of JFK. So we're going to select that. And we're just going to place it into the set position box here. If you've had work done on your airplane and it's moved more than 50 miles, or you had to send your box in, you'll get this reset initial position. And in order to clear that, just go ahead and enter it in a second time. In the aircraft and in the simulator, you would simply set this, push this button right here, the R4 line select key. These are line select keys, so this is the R4 line select key, and the GNSS would have that. You just push this and it would say completed, and you have to do this both on the software and in the aircraft as well. Once we've done with the position init, again we see here that there's position init 1 of 2. We can go to the second page. We can see that the FMS position, the GNS1 and GNSS2 positions all match. From this point, what we'd like to do is just go ahead and put in a basic flight plan. So we're going to select the flight plan function key. We have our origin as JFK, and we're going to do a flight today. We're going to assume we're going to leave from JFK and come back to JFK. We're going to climb out into the practice area, do some maneuvers, and come back in. So we'll plan on departing off of JFK on runway 13 right. The JFK 5 departure. We'll go out to 5,000 feet, and then we'll come back in on the Parch 3 arrival Sandy Point transition and the VOR runway 4 right. So in order to do this, what we need to do is we have an origin destination JFK. Our destination is, our origin airport is JFK. Our destination is going to be JFK. So we can either put in KJFK here on the keyboard, or because we already have it here, we can line select that. That will put that into the scratch pad, and then we simply place it here. Anytime you make a modification within the system, it's going to require you to execute that modification or to save the modification, and it will tell you up here that this is a modified flight plan. And eventually you'll get an error here, or not an error, but a reminder that you need to execute this in order for it to become active. Later on, when we start making some changes, you're going to see that we will actually be able to see those changes on our MFD before we execute them to make sure that it's what we would like them to be. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that change here, and it's going to go from mod flight plan now to an active flight plan. So we have a valid flight plan. There's not much there, it's just JFK to JFK, but it is a valid flight plan. Now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and set up our departure. We're going to be departing off of runway 13 right on the JFK 5 departure. So we simply select the departure and arrival function key. We select the appropriate departure. In our case, this will be the JFK 5. There are no transitions. And notice as soon as I selected that, we now went from ACT to mod, and we get an exec notice here. And again, it will pop up here in a little bit. If we don't do anything, it's going to warn us to do that, and there it is. Now we can select the runway we're departing off here if we know it. We're going to be departing off runway 13 right. We can also select this later, but we're going to go ahead and select runway 13 right. So now we have the JFK 5 departure with no transition off runway 13 right, and we're going to go ahead and execute that. Now what we've seen is, if you look over here on the MFD, you can start to see, let me just zoom in on that a little bit. That's as close as I can get. You can start to see this departure here. We also have this check database status message. So let's go ahead and clear that. We're going to come over here and click the stat button, and it's going to bring up our databases. This is the desktop software, so these aren't current, but they will be in your aircraft or the simulator. And so that's all we have to do there, and we'll get rid of that message. But we can see as we started to build this flight plan already, we're starting to see information on the MFD, including altitudes. So now we have the departure in there. We know that we're going to get the Parch 3 arrival, Sandy Point transition. So from here, we're on the depart arrive screen. We can simply select the L6 line select key for the depart arrival index page. And this is going to take us to a page where we can finish setting it up. So our departure airport is JFK. We can set a departure and arrival in there. Our arrival airport is JFK. So we're just going to go ahead and load the arrival in for that. So we select the arrive line select key, and we know that we're going to do the Parch 3. So we select the Parch 3, and we want the Sandy Point transition, SEY. So now we have the Parch 3 Sandy Point transition, and that's enough. We could go ahead and execute that here, or because we already know the approach that we're going to be getting, we could go ahead and load the approach, which we'll go ahead and do now, but we could also come back and do that at a later time. So we're going to hit next here, and we're going to just cycle down. This is 2 of 9 of approaches. We're going to cycle down until we get to the VOR runway 4 right approach at JFK. And here we have it, VOR 4 right approach. We're going to select that. Now, by default, the FMS will always select vectors for the transition. If there is another vector, another transition here, you'll have to select that, but it will always select that. And what I want you to see is if we come over here, I'm going to just expand on this a little bit. So notice that we have Beb key here. Because this is vectors, we're missing the procedure turn that's here. So once we select the JFK transition, you're going to see that the procedure turn shows up automatically. And there it is. Let's zoom in a little bit there so you can see it. So you can see the procedure turn is there. And when we execute that, that dashed line, this is the change that you're looking at, that dashed line will go solid. So we like all that information. It's a Parch 3 Sandy Point transition, the VOR runway 4 right with the JFK transition. When we execute that, these dashed lines will go away and those will become solid lines. So there we have it. And we have the altitudes and everything is in there as well. We're going to kind of look at this hold here in a little bit in another section when we talk about holds. Okay, so now we have a basic flight plan. So let's take a look at that. So I hit the flight plan button, the function key here, and I think the way I think of this flight plan button is this is like the 10,000 foot view. So it has our origin, our destination via the departure, and this is 1 of 3, so I can go ahead and select next. It shows that we have a discontinuity because it doesn't know how we're going to go from the departure to the Parch 3 arrival, Sandy Point transition. But notice that it just shows you the Parch 3 Sandy Point. It doesn't show you all the points, all the waypoints within there. So let's select next again, and then it shows us the VOR 4 right approach at JFK. So if we want to see all the detail of that, that's where we go to the legs function key. If we click the legs, this is where we have each individual waypoint with altitudes and speeds. So this is 1 of 5. So if we go to next, we see the Sandy Point, Parch, Calverton, Rober, JFK. We're going to see the discontinuity there. Then we're going to see the procedure turn, or the JFK VOR, the hold, the procedure turn, Beb key, the missed approach, and the hold at Deer Park. So the legs page is really where we see all of the information that we want to see. For just the software, I'm going to be doing a runway update. We don't do this in the sim, but for the software we do. And the reason for that is, let's go to the charts here and I'll show you. So what happens is when we first start up our simulation software, it parks the airplane right here. And what we really want to do is we want it to be parked over here on runway 13 right. So I'm going to just do a quick runway update. You can actually do this in the aircraft as well if you need to do it. But if the unit is working, you have GPS positioning, GNSS coverage, you won't have to do this runway update. So I'm going to go ahead and just select runway update, and notice it went ahead and parked our airplane on 13 right because we told it that we were going to be flying off runway 13 right. And that's important for our performance. Okay, so now we've done this flight plan. We like it. We see everything that's in there. It makes sense to us. So now what's next is we're going to do our performance for our takeoff. So we're going to go ahead and select the performance line, the function key, and we're going to start with performance initialization. Now, again, we've got, this is software, desktop software. The calculated fuel will be whatever you're setting a sim or your aircraft. For us, we're just going to set 3,000 feet here, or 3,000 pounds of fuel. It's going to go from calculated to manual and then back to calculated. So the aircraft believes we have 3,000 pounds of fuel on board, which for today is fine. In the simulator, this will be set for you by the instructor. And anytime they add more fuel to you, you'll have to come back in here and put that amount of fuel in here so that you get the proper performance numbers. For today, we have a BOW of 8,400 pounds. The FMS-3000 does not do balance, it just does weight. So we're just going to put 400 pounds of people and baggage all in the cargo line. You can put it in passengers, and you can change the BOW and the passengers and stuff like that. We'll show you that a little bit later in the defaults page. And then this will come up automatically. But for what we're doing, we're just leaving it at 8,400 pounds and one pilot, a passenger, and some baggage. That gives us a zero fuel weight of 8,800 pounds and a gross weight of 11,790 pounds. We also need the cruise altitude for performance. Today, we're going to be going to 5,000 feet. We can put that in a number of ways. We can put 5000. We can put FL50 or simply F50. Any of those are fine. You can plus it in there and it'll take it. If you forget and you put something crazy like FG50 and attempt to place that in there, you're going to get an error saying that it's an invalid entry. So you can't really mess that up too bad. So now we have this, we're going to go ahead and execute it. Notice it's telling us, hey, you need to save this information. So we're going to go ahead and plus the execute, and now this information is saved. So once we have that, we can now go to our takeoff button here, the R5 line select key. Go ahead and select that. Here is our takeoff references, 1 of 3. So it has our runway, winds, and notice we don't have anything here. So we're going to go ahead and plug some information in there. This is 13 right. We typically take off with a crosswind. So I'm going to put in 220 at 16 knots for the winds. And I'm just going to plug that into the scratch pad and select the R1 line select key. We're going to call it 20 degrees outside air temperature for today. And we'll leave it at 2992. So now it tells us we have a 1 knot headwind and a right 16 knot crosswind. It tells us our runway length, we have no slope. And here is our runway conditions. If I were to select wet, we're going to get a notice down here saying supplemental data, because that is where we get our information for our contaminated runway. We're going to go back, we'll just leave it at dry. Okay, so now we have, this is all right, we like that. And this is, notice this is 1 of 3. So we're going to go ahead and click next. And now here we have, are we using anti-ice? Are we have takeoff flaps 15? So for example, let's say we're going to take off flap 0. We just go ahead and select flap 0 here, and what will happen is you see immediately that our V-speeds change automatically and our takeoff field length changes. So we're going to go back to 15, so we're going to take off flaps 15. So we take a look at this. Anti-ice is off today, it's 20 degrees. We have a V1 of 93, a VR of 98, a V2 of 109, and a VT of 130. Those numbers make sense to us because we fly this airplane. We have a takeoff field length of 2,630 feet, and we have available runway of 14,511. Now that we have this information in here, we now have another little button here that says send. And so what's going to happen when I click send, it's going to send all those V speeds over and set them for us on our PFD. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and click send. So this is in progress. And notice that we have them all here. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and take those off magenta in case I get a last minute runway change. If we were to change runways in the box, it will deselect all the V speeds. But if I go in here and I go to my references and I take them off magenta, they will not deselect. So I like to do that just in case I get a runway change and I have to make a change in the box. These will remain. So now that's done. So now we're takeoff reference 2 of 3. Let's go to next. And here's where we're going to get our limitation. So our structural limit is 13,870. That makes sense, right, for the CJ3. Our performance limit is 13,870. If we were maybe at Eagle or Denver or Phoenix, someplace where it's hot or super high, your performance limit, this may be significantly less. Maybe this is 11,000 pounds. And then our runway length limit. But this is where we get our limits on what we're allowed to take off. And if you attempted to plug in performance numbers that exceeded these, you would get a V speed, because it's basically only giving you V speed information. You would get a V speed alert telling you that it couldn't set the V speeds. So that is the performance setup and initialization. And once we go, let's go ahead and clear that chart off here. And now we can see, if we take a look at this, we can see we have the departure, we have the approach in there, we have the procedure turn. This is showing us that we're going to be making a teardrop entry to that procedure turn at Bebke, and we have all the information that we need to be able to shoot that approach. So what we did today is we walked through the initial position initialization. We built a basic flight plan, including a departure, an arrival, and an approach that happens to be the VOR runway 4 right approach to JFK. And we went into the performance. We built, we put the fuel in, and we built out all our performance information by putting the cruise altitude in and how much weight we have on board. We verified all of our runway information. We put our winds and temperatures in, and then we pushed all of our V speeds to our PFD. And now we're actually ready to taxi out and take off.